Now it's time to introduce my speakers. We have Manuel Opitz and Professor Clemens Lange in the seminar. Very welcome. I don't know where Manuel is because that was not told me, but he can tell us in a second. But I'm pretty sure Clemens is in Münster. And so I want to start with introducing Clemens. Professor Clemens Lange studied medicine in the nice University of Freiburg, I personally know, and University College of London. 2015, he was appointed head of the Inherited Retinal Disease Unit and associate professor at the University of Freiburg. From 20 to 21, he served as a managing senior consultant at the Department of Ophthalmology at the University Medical Center in Freiburg. Since 2022, he has been working at the San Francisco's Eye Center in Münster. His clinical focus, as you might imagine, lies in macular and retinal diseases, vitreoretinal surgery and intraocular lens surgery. So welcome again, Clemens. You will go second. So the next and first speaker is going to be Manuel Opitz. He's the CEO and co-founder of deepeye Medical, bringing over 10 years of experience in the medtech industry with a background in industrial engineering and a specialization in medical technology. He combines technical expertise with the vision to drive innovation in ophthalmology. Very nice introduction. And so I'm looking forward to the presentations. Clemens and I will now disappear for a moment and give the stage to Manuel.
Thank you for the kind introduction by Heidelberg and Stefan. I'll pull up now my slides here. Just taking a second. So I have the pleasure now today for all of you to have the first 10-15 minutes speaking about AI in retina, and specifically also about our product, which recently received a CE marking, which is deepeye TPS. TPS stands for Therapy Planning Support. And let's dive right in. So I'll start briefly. This is a product which is regulated to be used with patients that have neovascular AMD and AMD, wet AMD. And just something I don't need to explain you what AMD is, or I don't need to explain you that this makes up usually 2/3, up to 75% of your intravitreal injection clinics. This is a problem, and what is very interesting is that it can also in the future be even a growing problem. Usually when we think about growing problems, we think more about diabetic macular edema, growing number of incidents in diabetes. But actually there was a recent publication that those very nice weight loss jabs that have been really the talk for the last 1.5 years are causing an increased risk for neovascular AMD in diabetics. So there's been a large review from Canada and Israel, including 140,000 diabetic patients who received semaglutide. This is one of those GLP-1 regulators or agonists, which basically help you to regulate your weight if you're diabetic, but also a lot of people who are not diabetics actually use it now to lose weight. And this has been shown, however, to have a greatly increased risk that you receive neovascularization in one or two of your eyes. So this is really something very significant, and we really hope that maybe other studies show that the effect is not as large as anticipated by the first review here of 140,000 patients. But it is really something, again, that highlights that neovascular AMD also in the long run will be the key cause and the key reason for vision loss in most of the global north. Now let's focus in a bit on AI in retina. Specifically, of course, we're talking here again about AMD, and there are different things that you can use AI for in retina. The first and most common known tasks are, of course, classification tasks, so that you have a disease type or disease stage that you want to classify, or that in an OCT image you have different kinds of biomarker segmentations, or also in a fundus. And there are very well-known applications and examples which I will show here. So first of all, we know that there are lots of companies around there. Google DeepMind tried this, but also, Digital Diagnostics in the US, IDX, as some of you know, has been around for more than 7 years as a regulated device to enable staging of diabetic retinopathy. And these are all screening applications that we usually don't really see in the ophthalmic practices, but more with opticians or optometrists. Over the last 5 to 7 years, however, there have been some applications that are focusing more really on in-clinic applications. So here we're talking, for instance, about the Red Insight group, which is a spin out from Vienna, Retina AI, based in Bern, or also now the deepeye group. We have been looking at OCT imaging. We identified certain markers that, of course, for you as ophthalmologists, support you in your decision making. And more recently, there has been also a lot of research into the area of prediction. So what actually does those classifications that we do, what does it provide us regarding the future of our patients? What does happen if we want to treat them, and what will happen basically after we treat them? Is there a trend? This has been very deeply thought about also for geographic atrophy, where of course you want to know, does actually this medication work? Does it slow progression? So you need to make a prognosis on the progression and compare it to what really happens. And this is something that, for instance, Retina AI has been doing with a product for geographic atrophy, but it is not yet regulated and on the market. So deepeye is to date the only regulated medical device on the market that provides really this future forward-looking prediction in terms of making a concrete suggestion regarding the current treatment for a neovascular AMD, for instance, whether, for instance, you should extend or shorten an interval. But even more long-term, what will happen? Is this a patient that will respond well to anti-VEGF injections, or is it somebody who is, let's say, a bad responder, somebody who has to come in every 4 to 8 weeks over the next year because this patient really has strong persisting fluids? So we try to categorize this as treatment planning, and we think we are the first tool in this area as a regulated medical device supporting treatment planning at the point of care. Now, we will zero in a bit more on our therapy planning support, and I need to bring out our quick disclaimer, of course, as a medical regulated device, there are risks with this, so we can also have false outputs that can also then inform the physician to potentially make a wrong assessment. This is very important to keep in mind and maybe less risky with some other applications, but because we are really focusing on the therapy process, it has certain risks. And so it is very important, like with every other AI application, that you always think for yourself and do not 100% only rely on the AI. We try to make our decision process of the AI as transparent as possible. We are not an AI that replaces doctors. We really have always human oversight, human in the loop. So we are really aligned with the EU AI Act, and we also go beyond this. So there are some guidelines and statements, for instance, from the German Ophthalmology Association that we also fulfill, that really not every AI application does fulfill, because we really just want to be an assistant to the doctor, helping you every day in your in-clinic work and not trying to replace you or automate certain steps. So how does it work? As we are today in a Heidelberg webinar, we are showing here the Heidelberg version. It is a very easy drag and drop solution once our application is installed. And what happens now in the background is that this image is actually de-identified. It's encrypted, and then it is sent to our AI server where it is processed. The overall process takes around 3 to 5 minutes. Of which 60 seconds is the AI analysis, and the rest is really the de-identification part, the encryption part, the upload, the download, the de-encryption, the re-identification, so that it really is matched to the right OCT of the right patient. All of this together takes 3 to 5 minutes. It's usually controlled by the medical support staff who are doing the photography, so it's not really operated by doctors. For you as doctors, in the end, you will receive the OCT, you will receive the AI report, and you can review both at the same time. So what does this report actually show? There are certain areas, and you see here both pages. Usually it's like a 2-page report, which you can scroll up and down. So I'm showing them here next to each other. And in the beginning, we have what we call the activity traffic light. The activity traffic light is basically mimicking what you as doctors do when you're reviewing an OCT. So it basically tries to come up with a decision. Is this a patient that I have to treat or have to treat more frequently? So I'm in the red area here of my disease activity. Or is it a patient that actually could go without an injection if I'm doing PRN, or if I'm doing treat and extend that could be extended? This is, of course, here the green area, the green traffic light area, you can say. There is also, as you can see, a white area in between. So this is also where, let's say, you need to look maybe twice. And this is exactly what we have the second page of the report for. So in many cases, let's say 60, 70, maybe 80% of cases, by a brief look at the OCT, potentially also by the history of AI analysis that is provided here. So is there a clear trend of the patient showing recurring disease activity, or is it somebody who is in a stable phase? So that's basically the history of the last AI analysis of this patient. If there's a clear picture, you will continue, you will have your decision done, you can document this decision, and you go on. However, if this is not a very clear-cut picture, then the second page of the report is available. And here you can see, for instance, the B scan, which showed the highest fluid of the certain marker, like IRF here or SRF or the highest PED, as well as the vision relevant part, so the 1 millimeter ETDRS central grid. So yeah, around the fovea to see how is the fluid changing over time over the last 6 visits that we have seen here. There's a last part, which right now is really more the forward-looking part. So here we are making a continuous prognosis on if this patient will lend itself again to higher fast extension or needs to be coming in every 4 or 6 weeks potentially. And this is really something that can be used in patient communication, potentially also in patient switching. I've heard from Professor Pricklinger recently, he used it at a congress because they want to identify patients who are eligible for the PDS system. So somebody coming in every 4 to 6 weeks and also showing a consistently high prognosis of treatment need for them was a good candidate to start talking about the PDS system. Last but not least, we also have some documentation down here, which you can have in whatever language you are. Right now, it's available in German, French, English, and Dutch, to my knowledge. We will add more languages as we go. So this is available and can be then automatically copied over to your patient file, to your EMR record, which can also then again save a few seconds when doing the analysis for each patient in your patient file. Here's a quick case which we have seen before, but now it's built up over time to show how the Heidelberg system enables this. So we only always analyze one single OCT image. Here is the first image, which was analyzed, and basically you will then build up over time all those dots here, next one, and the next one. Here we marked also the dot, which was then created for analyzing this image. And interestingly, you see here already a change in the disease activity as well as in the long-term treatment need. Although there is not a huge change. However, there are some small markers, extrafoveal, that might or might not have been overlooked. In this case, actually, the doctor decided, well, the patient looked relatively stable, 1, 2, 3 OCTs in a row, so I can extend the patient from 8 to 10 weeks. However, our AI would have maybe warned in this case, please check. There might be some very small but interesting fluid compartments you want to look at. And as we can see, the extension was the wrong decision to make. Hindsight, it's easier to say than at the point of care at this point of time, because we see really large fluid compartments the next time around and also the following one. So this is something how the predictive effect can really also help you to make sure you only extend at the right times and shorten when necessary. So the next part will be from Professor Lange talking about if this actually also works in real-world practice. I'll just show here briefly some for you maybe familiar faces. So we are working with key opinion leaders in the following countries right now, and especially in Germany, we already have lots of statements from people using the tool, testing the tool for several months, and since the last month, also using it commercially in their practice on patients. And the proof of clinical benefit that we could demonstrate, first of all, I mentioned already our compliance. We have a huge robustness across different OCT devices. So we have created over the last year more than 14,000 AI reports on more than 10 different OCT devices that are all compliant with our software. So we are really OCT device agnostic. We have also recently published something on the potential to reuse central retinal thickness. So we have basically as a, because we didn't have visual acuity in this study, we could use CRT as a surrogate for improving function. We also have done several measurements by now that showed that with our AI, doctors do not lead longer than they need without using the AI. Actually, in many cases, could speed up the review process because complex cases could be more easily decided, maybe even without, let's say, certain colleagues' help. And we could also, in another study, and I will highlight this again because this is also in the materials section, you will see the LMU Assist study flyer. This is something right now still happening. It's a study that you can join actually from where you are at home in front of your laptop, on your sofa, on your couch. You can participate. It's a 20-minute study, very interesting one, a psychology study, you can say, from the LMU eye clinic. They use a very rudimentary version of AI to check if basically a decision can be influenced by you as human doctors and how you would actually like to receive support from an AI. So do you reject certain types of AI suggestions or do you accept it and it helps you in your workflow? That's what this study is about. It takes around 20 minutes and you can review 10 cases. You will then review the same 10 cases with the support of an AI, and we will see if your decisions are influenced by the AI or not, and in which cases they are. Just be careful. The AI is not always right, so there might be some wrong cases mixed into this, but it's a very, very interesting exercise, and I can really recommend everyone who wants to try out if AI is something for you or not. And if you also want to shape how AI in the future will influence your decision making, going far beyond what we are doing at deepeye, this is really an interesting project. Yeah, last point that we have demonstrated, and this is what Professor Lange will talk about in 2 minutes, is it robust under real-world conditions? I won't talk too much about this because he will explain it. There are further presentations. There were recently at ARVO, at EURETINA, there are 2-3 presentations, papers by clinical collaborators from us, from the US, from Europe, who have been using the tool so far and who present their first results. And at DOG, of course, as well, in end of September. What's next up? Well, we want to, of course, prospectively in trials, now that we are live in clinics, prove that we have a positive impact on BCVA, or like we see right now, often also in pharma studies, balancing demand and need, and at least have non-inferiority there. We also want to show that there is potentially an increase of adherence or persistence rates so that we have less no-shows or less dropouts out of anti-VEGF therapy, because we think also, and we see that already first users start to use our tool to better explain to their patients what to expect in the future, but also show them the past success, with those curves and those visual graphics. It's something very powerful to make them aware, if you come back on time, we might be able to really keep you in the green zone, to keep you stable. So make sure you always come on time. Last point, cost effectiveness is something we have demonstrated in Germany and the Netherlands already, but we were doing now prospective studies to prove this also in the long run, and then also achieve reimbursement fit with reimbursement systems in other countries like France, Italy, Spain, etc., in Germany, Europe. But of course also in the long run in the US. So we also will have one study site actually, which is in the US in our European study. One last aspect. Today I was just visiting 3 ophthalmologists and all of them asked, okay, I'm medically convinced. I think it can work in our practice. It can support us. It can, standardize quality of care and improve it in the long run. But how does it pay back for me? Because our software AI was developed with huge investment upfront. We need to also charge a license fee. GPUs are not that cheap around at the moment. So this is why we are charging a license fee, an annual license fee based on the reimbursement basically you receive. So the numbers of injections you do. This means should our AI lead to less injections, we will also charge you less. Should our AI lead to more injections, and this is actually the case in 29 out of 31 cases that we have investigated so far, then we also want to, benefit from this, and therefore we charge an annual license fee. You can do however many OCTs you want, but it is important for us to be aligned with that when you receive reimbursement in the end, also 4, 5, 6 euros also basically land in our pocket. So far, we were always able to demonstrate for 29 out of 31 cases that we will provide a positive benefit to the bottom line so that our device software license cost will pay back itself in usually 2.1 months. And with this, I would like to close and remind again, we are an assistant, so we will not make your work go away. You will still have to do your work, but we hope to make it a bit more efficient and effective. And we hope that with our AI assistant, yeah, you will always have somebody like Professor Lange, let's say, sitting on your shoulder, being able to look at a certain case with you and make sure you always make the right and best decisions for your patients, achieve the best outcomes, and all of this in a very timely manner. I'm looking forward now to the presentation from Professor Lange on this aspect.
Yeah, dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Heidelberg and the organizing committee for inviting me to share today our first clinical experience following Manuel's talk. I'm not sure if I can sit on each of your shoulder. I'm not sure if you like this, but what I would like to do is actually to share our first clinical experiences. What is important to state is that I own shares in a company called Opitz, which also participates in deepeye, but I try my very best to remain objective and unbiased on this subject. So first of all, I would like to give you a brief summary and a brief background on our center and on my work. So as Stefan pointed out, I'm working in Münster in a specialized eye clinic at a tertiary care center. It's called the San Francisco's Eye Hospital. And yeah, we do see a lot of patients with neovascular AMD. We have about 40 eye doctors here which take care of these patients. And we obviously also do numerous of intravitreal injections. And this map here shows you in the center, our eye center. And to give you an idea on where the patients are actually living and how far they have to travel to get to our center. So in each dot represents actually the living or the hometown of one of our patients. In red, for instance, the AMD patients. You can see there are vast distances. The average distance is about 44 kilometers for our patients, and this ranges from 1 to 150 kilometers. So this sums up, as you know, a lot of injections, a lot of controls potentially. This sums up to in average over 1,500 kilometers per year for these patients, and we know this is a high risk. This is a high risk for non-adherence. And one of the most or the strongest reasons for patients not to adhere is the distance. And that's a problem for us. And actually the reason why we started a portal-based telemedical collaboration about 14 years or 13 years ago. So what we started those days, Professor Polaikov and colleagues initiated this, is to work hand in hand with our cooperating eye doctors, which are distributed around the Münsterland, which you can see here. So each circle is actually one practice of one of our colleagues, and we very closely cooperate with these doctors, and we integrated them telematically. So this actually helps us facilitating the therapy, and we ensure standardized quality. And what we try is, well, to no unnecessary duplicate exams. So how does it work? So basically, the initial diagnosis and the therapy decision of a patient with neovascular AMD is made at our center, at the injection center. So we usually recommend then, according to the PRN scheme, in an active case, 3 injections of anti-VEGF. The patient is coming only for the injections, and the post-injection OCT and the controls, they are done locally, if you like, next door to the patient at their local eye doctor. So the patients, they don't have to travel to get the OCT done to Münster. They're getting this next door. So the OCTs are then sent to our center, and our eye doctors, they look at the OCTs and they decide either to stop therapy if successful or termination criteria are met, or they decide to start a new injection series, again a PRN, 3 injections, or they decide, well, it looks good, further follow-ups can be done by the local ophthalmologist. And thus we save a lot of traveling for the patients, and we enhance adherence. And we looked at this just recently, And we found that using this telemedical collaboration, we have a good persistence of the patients of about 50% after 5 years. So here in this graph, you can see on the y-axis the cases in percent of the persistence, and on the x-axis the years after the first documented intravitreal injection. And here, these lines, they represent the results of real-world studies. So for instance, the OCEAN study here shown in yellow, they showed that actually after 2 years, only 29% of patients were still adherent or persistent. So that's the real world evidence, which is not good enough in our opinion, but we are very happy that actually with our system, we get a quite good persistence. So as I mentioned, about 50% after 5 years. And I think one of the reasons why this is so good is that the patients are followed very closely by their local eye doctors who tell them rigorously to go to the injection or not. So that's pretty good, but still I also have to admit it's a lot of work. So the OCT is traveling, not the patient is traveling, that's all fair enough, but it's a lot of work. So our eye doctors, we have to screen about 500 OCTs a week, which is doable, but which is tremendous work. And I think it's getting more and more. That's my feeling. So we hope, and that's our vision and our aim, that one day we have an AI-assisted therapy management to reduce this workload and to improve care quality. And I think we're very close to this point. And so we are working with the deepeye TPS. Manuel has just introduced to you. This is an older version of the report. Please forgive me, but still it works as Manuel has pointed out. So in general, you get a probability of disease activity or a disease activity score, which here in this case is 94%, so very likely to be active NAMD patient. And here you can see the annotated subretinal fluid and the PED. So that's a patient, I think everybody agrees, who should be treated, and also the AI states this. Yeah, so I would like to share our first real-life evaluation of deep eye reports in the treatment decisions for exudative AMD. So we call it a stress test because we actually really wanted to find out, hey, how good is this actually working for us and for our patient? And is there a real chance that we can implement this rather soon in our clinical day? So what have we done? We looked at a total of 429 eyes with exudative AMD. Those eyes and patients were under anti-VEGF therapy, and they were monitored in this portal, that telemedicine framework I just mentioned. And what we did is actually we compared the clinical decision, the real-world clinical decision of our specialist to the deep eye report. Simple question: to inject or not to inject? And we did also a double grading of the discordant cases. So if the AI decided differently than the real-world clinical fellow, then we looked at these cases in particular with a reading center, and we performed a double grading. 3 specialized retinal consultants looked at these images, and if there were any discrepancy here, we had a senior conference to solve them. The reading center I just mentioned, they assessed the cases in 3 steps. So first of all, they just looked at the current OCT, which is actually what the AI could do in the version we were using. So just looking at one OCT. Then the next step was we looked in the reading center at the past OCT as well, so which gives you information about dynamics, and if subtle fluid arises, that's pretty good to know. And third of all, we looked at the OCT plus the history plus the patient records, which is important to know, obviously. But to be fair and to say this, the AI actually, in this study, they only looked at the current OCT. So they didn't have any information about history of OCTs and about the patient records, and which is very relevant, for instance, if the vision threshold is reached or not, if therapy was refused for any reasons. So the AI didn't know this information, the clinician did. So this is maybe the most important slide of our so far clinical experience using this algorithm, and this shows you a 4-field table, and I just get you through this table. So on the y-axis, you can see the disease activity score from 0 to 100. We had a threshold initially of 50, so above 50, the artificial intelligence suggested an active case, and below 50, an inactive case. On the x-axis, you have the real-life decision of our expert in the clinic, who decided either to watch and wait, so not to inject, or to inject if an active case was seen. And each dot here in this graph shows you one case, the one patient. And what you can see here, for instance, on the left bottom box, the 242 patients, those were the patients actually where both the AI and the clinician agreed on that this is an inactive case, we can watch and wait. Similarly, on the right and up, there were 115 cases for which the doctor and the AI said, yes, that's somebody who needs to be treated. So this yielded an accuracy of 83% and a sensitivity of 74% and 88% of specificity if you calculate this. So we then looked at the discordant cases, so the cases which are in the box up left or down right. And we looked at these cases by a double senior grading and looked at these cases very closely, and we had to correct 13 cases. So the double senior grader not always agreed with the real world clinician. And here, for instance, you can see on the top, this red circle, this was a case in which the clinician, first of all, actually said, well, let's watch and wait. But in the reading center, who had more time to look at this OCT, they actually decided, no, that's somebody who's active, that's somebody who needs to be treated. So in total, 13 patients had to be treated. And this actually shows you what everybody has a feeling on. Also, we doctors, we do mistakes. You know, in a clinical routine, stressful day, we might overlook something. And these cases were actually seen here. So if we correct these 13 cases and we eliminate them here from our panel, obviously the accuracy is improved to 85%, sensitivity improved to 78%, and specificity to 90%. What we then ask ourselves is what I actually already mentioned. Is this comparison actually fair? Because actually, to be very honest, it's not really unfair. We're not comparing similar things. So the AI, as I said, they base the decision on one current OCT. And the real-world physician, we all do this, we look at more OCTs. So the follow-up gives us more information. Subtle changes in fluid is important to note and affects our decision. And obviously, we also have the patient history on hand. So actually, the comparison I just told you about is not really fair. And we looked at these unfair cases for the AI. And you can see here in red, for instance, those were the cases for which the visit was outside the treatment schedule. And those were cases, for instance, who were on faricimab. And according to the label, or initially to the label, we actually thought that faricimab is working for 8 weeks. So patients were coming to our clinic 4 weeks after the faricimab injection. The AI said, well, there's activity, and they were right. Also, the doctors saw the activity, but they said, hey, come on, let's wait. Faricimab is working or still working. Let's follow up in 4 weeks' time. So those 9 were explained by this. Also, we had 3 patients who refused treatment. Those are the blue ones. We had 2 patients whose visual acuity was below 0.05. So those were the patients who were not treated. And we also had 3 cases actually who didn't have a neovascular AMD. So if we exclude these cases, again, the sensitivity and specificity increases to 87 and 94% respectively. Then we looked at the other cases, and what we noticed is actually that some of the cases could only really be decided on using follow-up OCTs. So we definitely needed, even the experienced specialists, they needed a follow-up OCT to decide that there's a reason to inject. As I mentioned, the algorithm we used didn't have this option as far as I know, but Manuel can comment on it. Future algorithms or updates of the software would actually allow to also look at follow-up OCTs to decide. In one case, we had patient history which was needed, and in 12 cases, actually the imaging quality was not good enough, so the AI could not really make a good and fair decision. Obviously, there were also some AI misclassifications I would like to note and to show you. In most of the cases here, again, box right and down, the IRF was, if you like, the problem. I can show you here some images. So this, for instance, is the red encircled case. The clinical decision in panel A, yes, there's this error which is now highlighting the intraretinal fluid, which is a bit more compared to the last OCT in B, panel B. And the AI actually detected the fluid, yeah, is good, but the activity score was still sort of judged to be 21. So the AI detected it, but maybe underestimated the IRF compared to what the clinician has done. Similar here, an example of subretinal fluid, which was detected by AI, but maybe underestimated. Again, here you can see the orange arrow pointing out the subretinal fluid. Again, the AI in yellow detected the fluid, but again said, well, the score is 34. Here, another example where the AI didn't find or didn't report on the shrim, so subretinal hyperreflective material, which you can see in this case with the orange arrow, and the AI in this case didn't detect shrim, but as far as I know, the newer algorithms also working on this. One more, and maybe also the last example I would like to share with you here is a patient with a lamellar hole. Yeah, you can see again the orange arrow. There is a lamellar hole we recognize, and the AI, well, thought rather this may be intraretinal fluid and suggested, well, there's a high disease activity score. So this was a misinterpretation, but to be fair, actually, this algorithm should only be used with patients who have a neovascular AMD. So a lamellar hole patient actually shouldn't be analyzed, in my opinion, using this tool. All right, so I would like to finish with what we are implementing now, or we're doing or want to do in the future. I think or we propose to introduce a certain safety zone for uncertain cases, which is here highlighted in gray. So if the disease activity score is around between 33 and 63, I think we should have a further closer look at these cases. So these were here 89. We could, I wouldn't say accept the rest, but you know the rest is the 323 cases are rather sure. I would be confident about them, but still I would check them. But those 89 in this safety zone, I would double check more closely. And if we just focus on the 323 patients, this ends up in accuracy, which is quite good in my opinion, of 92, sensitivity of 83, and a specificity of 97. All right, so I would like to sum up and conclude that AI detects most cases of active neovascular AMD compared to real-world OCT assessment by specialists. Initially, we had a sensitivity of 74, specificity of 88%. Regarding of regrading of the discordant cases by the double senior grading, as mentioned, overruled real-world decisions in 80% of cases. That's something we need to bear in mind. And after correcting for these and excluding unfair AI cases, the sensitivity improved to 78 and specificity to 88%. The remaining AI inaccuracies lie in detecting and subtle intraretinal, subretinal fluid and shrim. But as I said, the newer algorithms are working on this. And we suggest or propose that introducing a safety zone for uncertain cases which will be flagged or should be flagged for physician review, could raise sensitivity even to 83 and specificity to 97%. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And before we go into the question and answer session, I would like to remind you how to ask questions. There have been many questions, a couple of questions, but there can maybe more from the entire group. So post your question into the chat and send it. The next thing is you raise your hand to ask your question personally, and if you want, and confirm that, you can even speak via camera. And so these are your two possibilities. And now let's maybe start with the questions that came in. And the very first question is, can we expect that deep eye will replace regular follow-up examinations of an ophthalmologist in the near future, or does it always need an extra check? How far are we away, or how close are we at that point? Maybe to Professor Lange to start with.
Well, thanks. That's a very good question, a very valid one. In my opinion, so far, a doctor always has to be involved, and we should always double check the AI reports and suggestions. So I don't see that the AI is taking it all over and taking all the work away from us. It will reduce our work, it will reduce the time we have to spend. But so far, my opinion is we need to double check, obviously, the cases. Some cases need to be double checked more closely than others. So if the deep eye software, for instance, says it's a disease activity score of 99, I would be very confident that's right, but still I would check it. If it's a disease activity score of 52, I would check it in more detail.
Maybe then a follow-up question to that on my end. I mean, in all AIs or in any testing in general, the ends of the spectrum are always relatively easy, with or without any assistance system. So you said the safety zone in the center would be a good idea where you need, in particular, double checking. But now you say checking everything. Is that maybe a question to both of you? The transition state, because we have to get confidence in AI and everything, or will that always be like that and we just get a little bit more help? Maybe we start with Professor Lange and then Manuel Opitz can follow.
I think legally, but Manuel, please correct me if I'm wrong. I thought legally we doctors have to be involved. But I may be wrong. So far, I think we're in a certain transition zone, and I think there's a great future for AI. It will come one day, but at the moment, I'm pretty happy and I would be more confident to check the cases. But checking the cases can be quite different. You can do it rather superficial or very deep. Also, it takes less or more time. But I would check them all at the moment. But Manuel, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think there's several aspects here. I mean, legally, we know there are some autonomous AI already. Those are those diabetic retinopathy screening AIs that I mentioned before, like IDX or INOC, for instance, in the US. They don't require actually clinical supervision. This is something which might work in the screening case, but it also means that, of course, those AIs are very tuned to have a extremely high specificity but low sensitivity, meaning we have lots of false positives in our clinics, which can be also very annoying. Regarding the anti-VEGF case here in the OCD review, I don't think there will be a way forward for us just clinically to replace a doctor decision. I think for us, this is really not what we are planning to do. And I also don't think that other companies in the space wants to achieve this. There are legally, let's say, less boundaries, although, for instance, let's say the MDR, our European Medical Device Regulation, would allow it. However, the AI Act, the European AI Act, it would restrict it because usually it requires to have a human in the loop. And last but not least, it's an ethical question as well. And there are ethical guidelines, for instance, again, by the German Ophthalmology Board. And they clearly say also, we don't want to have an autonomous AI in our practices. We want to have a supportive system. So for me, the way forward is really that we try to make work more effective and efficient, but we don't take away this decision making. And we really also have to see here, I mean, the Münster case is very special because all those OCTs they receive, those 500 OCTs, lots of them have been reviewed before when they are sent to Münster. So they already do a double reading of every single OCT image, which in usual daily practice is not the case. And there you can think about switching out the second reader with an AI reader. So what we basically enable with deepeye is to have what Münster basically has everywhere because we have a second AI reader in the future. And those cases that Clemens pointed out, let's say, which are in the safety zone, those cases are really also where in the future you really might want to check, let's say, our second page of the report and really go into detail about all the individual biomarkers. While what we see is in 70, 60% of the cases, the doctor using the report, they take a quick look at it. They take a quick look at the OCT. They have the entire history of the patient. They look at the MR and they can continue with their next patient. So it can really, for those cases, it's very quick. And only those things, let's say in the safety zone where maybe the AI already predicts a change, this is really where you spend more time, but still much far less time than usually when you ask maybe a colleague at a university clinic who has more experience and you need to discuss him. You need to call them. They need to call up the image on their screen. They have to look at the history. This takes minutes, while a discussion, let's say, with the AI takes a couple of seconds.
Okay. Following further up with the next question, which goes maybe as well in a little bit in the direction of confidence. I mean, getting confidence in the AI. And the first question is always the question, where does the data come from? How is the AI trained? What devices have been in there? And maybe as a follow-up question for Professor Lange would be, in the Münster study, you said the support network away from AI you built up more than a decade ago. Are they all using the same device? And maybe so we start with Manuel Opitz and the question about training data or ground truth, if you want.
Yeah. The one important comment to make is here that if this device is now used through the Heidelberg AppWay, we don't store any data. So the OCT is de-identified, uploaded, encrypted, and it's deleted after we process it. So we don't use this for training. What do we use for training? We have partnerships with several ophthalmology networks. One of those is, of course, Münster, and one of the most important ones, because actually they have a very diverse data set, you can say. There are really 50, 60, 70 practices with different machines, different photographers. So it's not like, let's say, one large university medical center with 2 SPECTRALIS, but they have all kinds of devices. And this makes it very robust. In total, we have in our training data set over 200 sites globally, with a strong focus on Europe right now, but we also have several data sets from Japan as well as from the US. And we have data from more than 10 different device types, so also different versions, Spectralis 1, 2, zeros, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, etc. So we are very comfortable with Zeiss so far, all the TopCon devices with the Heidelberg, of course. And recently, we also now have the compliance for the Optopol devices. We are looking now into even more rarer manufacturers like Canon, and first results have been also very positive that our AI is really device agnostic and that we can also adjust it to, let's say, different looking input. So that's what it was trained on. In terms of, let's say, patients, what I would mention is also we make a prognosis. So what we need is actually data from one patient over time. And that's very different to what we see in most data sets where you have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 OCTs per patient. In our case, on average, we have 14 OCTs per patient. So these are all patients who have been in treatment for 2 years. Some of them have been in treatment up to 10 years. And this really enables the AI to learn, to predict also, and react to those subtle changes that we sometimes see, and then make a forward-looking prognosis statement on if activity is high or low. That's about the data set. Clemens?
Yeah. And maybe as a follow-up, how about the referral centers? What do
I
they?
think Manuel already answered this. So yes, our network, so our collaborating partners, they use different OCT device types, and we get all the different OCT images to our center, and we have all the different readers to open them, to look at them. So yeah, so this is independent of any device, special device type.
And the next question would be in terms of maybe something that has been probably answered, the first examination of each patient. Let's say if you have already a series, is that taken into account, or is it just a single image decision? I think that has been mentioned, but I double check for the AI.
Yeah. So in our case, I mean, this is something where I think Heidelberg has made a very clever solution. We always only analyze one single OCT. Of course, what you can do if you want to have this very nice history graph. So if you start using deepeye, what many people then do is basically tell their medical assistants if there is a list for the next morning of 12 patients who will receive anti-VEGF, and they will have an OCT taken. They ask them the day before to upload, let's say, the last 3 to 5, sometimes up to 10 visits of this patient. This can also be done now actually as a package. So you can take also 5 images, upload them. They will be processed one after each other. This will take a bit longer. But the next day, when you create the report using the new image, automatically all those reports and the AI analysis results, Heidelberg provides basically the data plus the new image to us, and we can then have the very nice report showing the history. This is right now only available if you're using HiX2, because other manufacturers, let's say other imaging solutions like Harmony or Forum, they're still working on implementing this. So that's definitely an advantage if you're a HiX2 user.
Okay. Back to the trust discussion. Are the patients informed that they are evaluated by AI in some way? To Dr. Lange, it says.
Obviously, we talk about it. So we haven't implemented it in a clinical routine yet. So this stress test I just shared with you was finished a couple of weeks ago. So we needed, first of all, a solid scientific basis to really implement it in clinic. But once we do this, obviously we have to tell them, and we tell them that this is a help from the AI. And most of the patients I've talked to are very open about this, because this can, well, the general thought is that, or they think that it will definitely help and improve care.
Okay, very good. And another question to Münster: are you planning as well to check if the visual outcomes improve relative to the decision path by physicians only? Is there a benefit in terms of the visual outcome using the AI?
Of course. Very good point from the colleague who mentioned this. Yeah, that's definitely something we want to do, and also something Manuel has mentioned needs to be done. Obviously, there's always morphology, but there's also function, and function is a very important outcome. And we definitely want to check if AI may help to increase visual gains. We'll see. I can't comment on this yet.
Yeah, okay. But it has been put into your head already. So, so that the next question goes.
Maybe just one comment in this direction. If there are people listening in from France or Belgium or the Netherlands, we are not 100% decided yet on the study sites participating in those countries regarding exactly such a study. In Germany, we have, however, recruited all of them. So yeah, if some people want to reach out to us, we might be able to see if you are fit for such a study to check visual acuity over time regarding AI-assisted support versus without.
Okay. And there are a couple of questions which I like to summarize, maybe under the legislative. What is the part for sensitive data, especially in Europe under the data protection law? What do you have to take care about? What is critical? What is still to be solved? And how do you take care about that? I mean, you mentioned that it has been mentioned that it's an issue, not an issue, but has to be taken care of. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. So I can say last week we had a discussion. I think there were 2 IT people and 3 data protection people at a German university clinic, and we had a very nice discussion on this. And I would summarize what they said in the end. Well, your AI is not the problem. We just have to check basically that the Heidelberg system is doing what it should do. Because as I mentioned, we do an de-identification process from our standpoint. Let's say if we are being hacked while we analyze the OCT. So in those 60 seconds that the eye is analyzing the OCT and we are being hacked, and of course, again, under medical device regulation, we have to show this is safe. We are doing regular penetration tests, so ethical hackers trying to hack us and make sure this cannot happen. But even if it would happen, they would have an OCT with a cryptic key. They don't have any clue where it comes from which doctor, which patient, from which area actually in Europe. They don't know. We also don't know either. So that's a big advantage. And this means they have no way to re-identify this patient. There are several lawyers who had looked at this and said, from our point, this is actually anonymized data and is not even personal health information because an OCT doesn't count like it, unlike a fundus photography, because it's not really health information that you can recognize a patient with. So it doesn't even fall under GDPR. That being said, we have to make sure on the hospital side that the anonymization process, or from your point, the pseudonymization process is working correctly. And I think this is something that Heidelberg has, for instance, done here in the HIX2 system a very good job on, to make sure this is a very robust process, that no patient data is sent along with the image and that there is a very good pseudonymization process happening. And this is something then that the data protection offices at university clinics typically look at. We have also seen in some other countries, they are a bit, let's say, more relaxed about this. So what they did basically, they asked us, okay, we will send you now an OCT. Please do not delete this OCT, which we usually automatically do. We captured this OCT and we sent them back the OCT they sent us. And then they tried to re-identify with basically the OCT they received from us, if they could match it into their database. And they were actually not able to do this without a huge manual effort. And so this was, again, another nice proof for them to show that the anonymization process or pseudonymization process by the HIX2 platform worked very well. And this is something that if you're working, especially in large hospitals, that your data protection officer will want to look at, and that we can provide an AI Act package on, but that also HIX can provide a data protection package on. It's also something that is already often checked if you work, for instance, with two sites together with one HIX instance. There's already something that which is checked because the mechanism is exactly the same in the background.
Okay. I mean, obviously we have a guest from Brazil, and there comes the question as well, is there a way to set the device not to store sensitive data? I think this is what's happening. It's not on the device, it goes this scenario goes to the cloud and back, but it's a double question, a question about this point maybe. I think this question has been answered, but are the 5 minutes acceptable? I mean, in clinical stress testing, we talk about stress, 5 minutes sounds long. Up and down, how is the reality check here, to Münster the question?
Well, the 5 minutes start actually when the assistant is pressing the button. No? So the eye doctor is actually confronted with the report right away. So I don't have to wait 5 minutes. So basically, it's the OCT is taken, and then the person who's actually taking the OCT is already starting the process that the report is built. And then at the end of the day, there's the doctors don't have to wait for the report.
Very good. We are at the end of our webinar. Time flies quick. I have to thank again all the speakers. Thank you to Manuel Opitz, and thank you to Clemens Lange. And thank you to the team behind for organizing that and setting it up technically. So I wish everyone a pleasant evening, morning, afternoon, depends where you listening and watching from the world. Thank you for attending, and thank you to the speakers again.
Thank you, Stefan.
Bye-bye.